Canary by Cloud9 and 3/4. Chapter 48. The End of the Beginning. There was a ringing in his ears, like what came after Kachan's explosions. It took Midoriya back for a moment. He half expected to wake up with his head down on the desk of his old school, with Kachan glaring down at him with a sinister smile on his face, whilst the teacher scolded Midoriya for sleeping during class, which had happened more than once. He used to stay up too late studying. All in all, it was a recipe for disaster. But that was then. Midoriya woke up in a hospital, which honestly made him feel better than the thought of waking up back in middle school. He didn't acknowledge it was a hospital for a few minutes, though, as he just lay there staring at the whitewashed ceiling, blinking slowly as his senses came into focus.
And welcome back to Put Your Hands on Radio! It is 6:30, so welcome to Canary's Hour!
Came the high-pitched sound of a vaguely familiar female voice. Midoriya turned his head for his tired eyes to rest on an old radio propped up on his bedside table. It was eerily similar to the one he had when he was with the League of Villains.
Our wonderful star isn't here today, so instead everyone give a warm welcome to Owl,
said Minim, one of President Mike's sidekicks. She did a lot of the radio shows where President Mike was out patrolling or working in UA. So where was he?
Hey, it's great to be back again,
Jiro replied. Midoriya zoned out from the radio. It became background noise to him as he groggily pulled himself upright. Glancing at the window, the curtains blowing softly in the cool breeze that drifted through, the sun was already setting. He turned away from it, frowning. They had started the raid of the Shie Hasakai at around 8 o'clock in the morning. It was already 6:30 at night? Wow, he slept through the entire day. He started to stretch out his arms, which were aching and sore. Which was when he hesitated, eyes wide. Wait, if Jiro's on the radio, it had to be either Tuesday or Thursday. And the raid had been on Monday. Oh no. The door creaked open slowly. Midoriya let his arms drop as he waited for whoever was behind it to reveal themselves. It turned out to be a nurse, who walked in on the tips of her toes, sliding her clipboard in onto an empty chair as quietly as she could. She still hadn't looked in Midoriya's direction. Midoriya ended up letting out of his mouth. The sound made her do a double take.
Oh, you're awake, she exclaimed. Sorry, did I wake you up?
No,
I was trying so hard to be quiet. Sorry,
she added in a mock whisper.
You've been sleeping for quite a while.
How long? Midoriya questioned insistently, leaning forwards a little.
Oh, about a day and a half,
she estimated, retrieving her clipboard as she kicked the door closed.
How are you feeling?
He just blinked at her while she waited for an answer. I've been asleep for a day and a half.
She cocked her head to one side. Your teacher said that was a normal backlash for your quirk after using it to this extent. Moreover, you had a pretty heavy concussion after passing out so quickly and bashing your head. You did wake up briefly this morning, and Recovery Girl came in to heal you up. You fell back to sleep right after.
Midoriya stammered. It's usually not that bad. He had been practicing his powers so much after school. Yeah, he did feel pretty bad afterwards, especially if he had been using the entirety of the songs, going all the way through them, and then moving straight onto another power. But really, he hadn't experienced hardcore usage of his power in life or death scenarios other than that time with Stain, which had left him unconscious for almost an entire day. Right, that was a similar amount of time to when Midoriya must have woken up for Recovery Girl. And the other 12-ish hours? Maybe that was because of the hero's stamina-sucking downside. Or what about Aries? Eri! What happened to Eri? Midoriya asked hurriedly, leaning forwards on his bed. He felt a lot more awake now. These questions were buzzing around in his mind.
The little girl?
The nurse blinked as she unraveled the device to check Midoriya's blood pressure.
I don't have clearance to check on her, but she's here. She woke up a while ago now, but she has a bad fever and is being carefully monitored because of that quirk of hers. I heard it could be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, Midoriya sighed, holding out his arm to her for the blood pressure check. He sat there in silence for a moment whilst she did what she needed to do. Midoriya stared at his phone, sitting just out of reach on his bedside table next to the radio. Always getting himself into some kind of trouble, laughed Jiro from across the device. I'm sure he's fine. Probably listening right now. Hey, Canary, get back soon. I need to copy your English homework. Midoriya grinned. You have such nice friends. The nurse smiled as she finished her checks. But you seem to find me. You just needed a rest. The hospital will be okay to release you, so to speak, in a few hours. Midoriya nodded, his throat a little dry. Thanks. No problem. I'll go and tell everyone you're awake. You might get some visitors in a bit, she explained, walking over to the door and pulling it open. Sit tight. Yeah, thanks, he simply repeated as she left. He should have asked for some water or something. He was parched. He flopped back down into his bed, letting his arms fall to his sides as he stared back at the ceiling. He lay there for a few seconds more before reaching over to his phone, not looking as he did so and almost dropping it in the process. One glance at his influx of messages and he sighed deeply. He was about to tap on his "Aria in the aviary" chat when a call came in and he accidentally clicked answer. Without checking who it was, he put his phone to his ear. Hello? Izuku! Yelled his mother. Midoriya ran his free hand down his face. Hey, Mom! Sorry, I was so worried! She continued to exclaim, not letting Midoriya get a word in. I got a message from the school saying that you were participating in a rescue effort yesterday and that you ended up in hospital! Mom, I'm not injured, he insisted, sitting up again. It's just quirk overusage. I'm tired, that's all. Then why aren't you at UA? Because they just took everyone straight to the hospital and they must have just left me to sleep here instead of disturbing me. But you must have been asleep for over 24 hours! Yeah, I know, Midoriya sighed, now rubbing his eyes. I overdid it and overslept. Sorry. You don't have to apologize, Izuku, she said softly. I'm just worried about you. You don't have to be worried, he smiled, although he knew there wasn't much he could do to stop her. Honestly, I'm fine. Okay, but you have to call more often from now on, okay? Okay. How is everyone? Fine. I haven't seen them since yesterday, but I'm pretty sure they're okay. Eri, I'm guessing that's what they meant by rescue effort. Is she okay? Did you find her? Yeah, I haven't seen her yet either, but apparently she's here, in the hospital. So hopefully I'll get to see her in a bit. Oh, that's good. What about Siren? Is she as loud as ever? His mother chuckled. Siren? Midoriya bit his lip. Yeah, that was another question entirely. I don't know. She's not here at the moment. I'm sure she's fine, Inko assured. But was she? The bullet. That was a quirk erasing bullet. It wasn't golden like they had been when Midoriya was with the League of Villains in that awful warehouse. It was red this time. Red as the blood it drew. And there were so few of them. In a specialized case. A different version of the formula? Perfected version. One that could remove quirks permanently. Of course, it was all speculation. He didn't actually have an evidence of such. But nonetheless, there were a few conclusions that Midoriya's racing mind could draw from it. The bullet most certainly wasn't designed for a bird. He knew it caused some serious damage to her, judging from her severe limp he had seen yesterday. Something had definitely affected her cognitive abilities. She wasn't acting like Siren, the last Midoriya remembered. She was just hopping around like an ordinary female canary, lacking in birdsong. Siren's abnormalities referred Midoriya to something he'd been considering on and off ever since he'd met her. That she had a slight intelligence quirk. It wasn't really anything he could prove, except for perhaps this. If that was a quirk erasing bullet, it erased her quirk and left her as just that, a female canary, not Siren. Midoriya, after a slight hesitation, nodded, briefly forgetting that, of course, Ingo couldn't see that. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Okay, well, I won't disturb you any longer, his mother had decided. But call me. And your father. Of course, yeah, I will. Bye, Izuku. Bye. And he hung up with a deep sigh. Ah, the worries of a loving parent! Midoriya blinked and looked up to the door. Leaned against the doorframe was a tall, bespectacled man, his blonde hair tied roughly into a messy bun. You won't escape it! Not even when you're as old and gray as me! Prison Mike! Midoriya exclaimed, tossing his covers aside and leaping off the bed, running straight into his arms. Hey there, little listener! He replied as he hugged him tight. You know, I never did come up with a good alliteration for co-host. What do you think? Midoriya just shrugged as he stepped back from him, beaming. Well, why aren't you on the radio? I'm going to see you, my clever co-host, he said with an unsure look on his face, letting the door swing closed. Midoriya just shook his head, still grinning. Yeah, fair. That one was weak. How about confident co-host? Really? Charismatic? None of these are words that describe me very well. Temple! Have you seen any of the others? Midoriya interjected, retrieving his phone from his bed and shoving it in his jacket pocket. The jacket had been hanging off the end of the bed. He was still in his hero costume, which wasn't actually that battered, considering the ordeal it had been through. He pulled his arms through the jacket as President Mike spoke. You're up! I just came back from speaking to Ari after that nice nurse said you were up! You were with Ari? I'm guessing you're keen to see her? He supposed with a grin almost as wide as Midoriya's. I mean, can I? President Mike tossed the door open once again. Right this way, my charming co-host! Okay, it's time to stop, my creative stop! Ari's room wasn't far away. They were in some kind of university hospital, President Mike had explained. It was lower profile than bigger hospitals in the immediate area, which was perfect for keeping it on the down low that well-known heroes such as Ryukyu and, well, Canary had paid the place a visit, if not briefly. More importantly, though, it meant that Ari could be kept out of the public eye. The Shie Hasekai may no longer be much of a problem, but the League of Villains was still out there. I'm afraid they didn't get far, though, President Mike said, which made Midoriya do a double take. What? The League? He frowned. The hero looked back at him and sheepishly rubbed his head. No! Well, guess I know! I was talking about the thugs from the Yakuza! What about them? Midoriya pressed as they came to a halt outside what was probably the door to Ari's room, isolated from the rest of the hospital. The transport on the Winter Tartarus was intercepted by the League! President Mike admitted with a sigh. Shigaraki took the remaining quirk erasing bullets! And Overall's arms, too! Midoriya blinked at him. His arms? What about the rest of him? Now in prison, he said with raised eyebrows. Midoriya looked at the floor, thinking back to... Stick to your own way to achieve your goals. I'll stay out of your hair, Overhaul had drawled. But if you want some of those bullets, a few every month, perhaps, a sort of alliance... I owe your side an arm, after all. And in return, Shigaraki had growled in reply. Canary. You all right, Canary? President Mike questioned. Midoriya blinked. Yeah. Sorry, just... thinking. We can go back to your room if you want, he offered, concerned eyes glancing down at him over the top of his glasses. He shook his head, eyes now fixed on the door in front of him. No. I'd like to see Ari, if that's okay. President Mike nodded. I just thought it would be best that you knew. Thank you, Midoriya replied as his teacher reached for the doorknob. Canary! Exclaimed Ari the moment she laid eyes on Midoriya. He grinned as she leapt off her bed and charged towards him, hugging him gently as soon as she reached him. I'm so glad you're okay, Midoriya whispered into her ear before pulling away and standing up straight again. He'd had to bend down to let her reach him. The little girl, now dressed in far more comfortable clothing than the rags she had supplied to her when she was with the villains, pulled at her sleeves and clenched her eyes shut tight. I'm so sorry that you got hurt. It's my fault. And Ari, Midoriya interjected, shaking his head. None of this is your fault. It's not your fault that anyone got hurt at all. That's all Overhaul. Don't listen to what he said to you. He's a villain, and he's in prison now. He can't hurt you anymore. She blinked up at him unsurely, glancing at Present Mike too, who Midoriya wasn't sure she recognized out of his hero costume, but he could have been babysitting her in a civilian getup at some point. That seemed likely enough.
And what about you?
She asked in the softest voice possible, rosy red eyes full of concern. Midoriya just smiled pitifully. No, of course not. He can't hurt either of us, or anyone else for that matter. He reached out for her hand, which she quickly took, and he led her back to her bed, helping her up onto it. She sat on her knees beside Midoriya, whilst Present Mike took the chair nearby. Are you feeling better, Harry? Questioned the hero in his more compassionate voice, rather than that excitable, loud tone he often adopted. Eri instinctively reached up and tapped the end of her horn. It was significantly smaller than Midoriya remembered it being. She just nodded in reply, and that was the end of that conversation. Eri didn't seem to have quite finished with their previous one, though.
What about the other villains?
She asked, turning back to Midoriya. He supposed she meant the League. They were still out there. Who knows how long they'll be like that, and what they plan next. But secretly, Midoriya rather looked forward to confronting them again. They can't hurt you either, Midoriya smiled. Not with me around, and all the heroes too. They'll be super careful now. For sure, little listener, Present Mike nodded. We'll go back to UA in a few hours and you'll be safer than ever. Canary too! She didn't say anything more for a moment, just sitting there and fiddling with her thumbs, deep in thought. She opened her mouth a few times, as if she wanted to tell him something, but wasn't sure how. Then she furrowed her brow, looked up to Midoriya, and raised her hands.
You are a hero!
Midoriya grinned brilliantly and repeated exactly what she said. You're the hero to me, Bluebird! He beamed. There was the slightest of smiles on her lips there for only a fraction of a second, but Midoriya could see it.
I want hero.
He tried not to frown, but he wasn't quite sure what she meant until she tried a little more sign.
Can I hero like you?
Wait, was she asking if she could be a hero? You want to be a hero? He questioned unsurely. She balled her little fists together for a moment and then looked up to him with such determination in her eyes and nodded.
Like you.
He wasn't going to cry. No, absolutely not. What are you talking about? That would be ridiculous. Why would that make him? And he cried. He didn't let her see, though, and pulled her in close to his chest to hug her tightly. Present Mike spied the tears welling up at his eyes, though. He grinned stupidly at him, and Midoriya rubbed them away with the back of his hand before signing to his teacher to shut up, without Eri noticing. Once he'd sufficiently recovered, he let Eri go from her hug. Of course you can be a hero, Miss Miracle, he teased her, poking her in the shoulder. To be a hero, all you need, confidence and conviction. Then you can do anything. The smile was definitely there now. Convicting! Oh my god! Stop! He opened his eyes, which struggled to adjust to the dull light in the room. He didn't remain like that for long, staring at the ceiling. His head protested as he sat bolt upright, blood rushing from it as the whole room span around and around. What? No. This wasn't how he... The furious beeping of the heart monitor to his right ripped him from his dizzying thoughts. Only then was he painfully aware of the amount of wires and tubes that ran from the side of his stomach and over towards the numerous machines that surrounded the heart monitor. This wasn't the future he saw. The world eventually stopped spinning, and he was reminded that he was still on land and not out at sea. Now Sir Nighteye cast his eyes towards the clock. It was always the first thing on his mind. Time. It was almost 7, but of course he couldn't be sure what day he had found himself in. He felt his heart beat faster. He didn't need those rhythmic sounds to tell him so. The waters he was in now were completely uncharted. If he were in waters... That is... No, he most certainly was still on solid earth. Hard, stone cold reality, immovable, unchangeable. Destiny. He looked down at his hands. One was wrapped in thick bandages, the other was bare, exposed to the light. Nighteye once believed that these hands cast the future in an unbendable resin, something he could see but not touch. Try as hard as he might to change its shape, he simply did not have the power. He was right, but also so terribly wrong. He didn't have that power, for it was the will of others, their determination, their stubbornness that made the difference. When they were more immovable than the future itself, and I jumped. The machines around him protested loudly for it. Fumbling for his glasses, which he was sure were sitting ready for him on his bedside table. If they weren't, he'd be in trouble. The world came into even greater focus as he slipped them on. The hero blinked at a tiny green ball of feathers perched on the end of his hospital bed. He frowned. "You're Canary's pet. Why are you out?" The bird had hopped down off the metal frame of the bed and harshly bit Night-Eye's exposed toe. "What was that for?" he exclaimed. "You're not a pet?" Night-Eye hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowed as he stared at her through narrowed eyes. Was he having a conversation with a bird? "Where's Midoriya?" he asked, recalling the young hero's name. He was even younger than Mirio, too young to have been through what he had, seen what he had seen of this harsh reality. Nada had no idea what that meant. "Okay, what are you doing here?" He didn't know why he even asked that question. "Go on, sure." The bird just cocked its head to one side. "Sure," Nighteye repeated. "You're not supposed to be in here. How did you even get in? Get out!" It just blinked at him. Right, the bird wasn't going to understand him either, was it? Then I supposed it was going to have to spend some time with him now until it could be reunited with its owner. Companion, he supposed. The hero sighed and lay back down, rubbing at his temples, his eyes closed as he tried to think over the events leading up to this, and what had changed to allow him to live. A few moments later, he wrinkled his nose in some kind of irritation. He opened his eyes and zeroed in on a patterned green face of a curious bird. "Get off," he said slowly. The bird just head-butted his glasses and then hopped down off his nose, walked across his face, and settled onto the cushion beside him contentedly. Nighteye stared at it. Maybe he was dead. Perhaps they were both dead. Him and the bird. None of this made much sense anyway, so it was a logical conclusion to make. Either way, he had now found himself lying beside a nestled green canary that he had absolutely no connection to, listening to the whir of the machines, keeping his condition stable. "I'd like to thank your companion, friend Midoriya," Nighteye said after a while. The bird had been pecking at the pillow cover and trying to rip it up. It was strangely therapeutic to watch. But she had stopped now at his words. It really did make him think that she could understand. Nighteye sighed and averted his gaze back to the ceiling. "He showed me something I didn't think possible. That his future was entirely under his control. My quirk, perhaps it just shows the most likely future. But there are outliers. Rare possibilities that you can only reach if you put all your heart and soul into making it so. And others must too. If every major event in the timeline has only a 90% chance of occurring, then the further down this timeline we go, the less likely any major event is to happen, considering. So that means events that I see very far into the future are much less likely to happen than I first expected. Of course, that's only one hypothesis. There's the act of the girl's quirk that we must consider too. Rewind. So it affects time. Does that mean it affects my quirk too? Can my ability see the reversing effects of hers? Or do they fundamentally contradict each other? What do you think? The bird stared back at him. He sighed. Yeah, that's what I thought too. There was a knock on his door. Come in. Nighteye responded, as if on habit, to answering the door to his office. But instead, he was in a hospital with a bird. The door was thrown open with some surprise. The man behind it wore an expression that matched the action, but Nighteye didn't recognize him, and he didn't appear to be a nurse or doctor. "You're awake!" the man exclaimed. His voice was rather familiar. The man from the radio. "Present Mike." "We heard voices, and we thought there was a nurse in here with you or something." Nighteye cleared his throat. "No, that was me. I was just talking to..." "Siren?" From behind the man, who Nighteye assumed was Present Mike, came the short green-haired form of one Izuku Midoriya. Canary. The bird, Siren, he remembered her name now, quite literally threw herself off the bed, spread her wings, and soared across the hospital room, landing in the hands the Canary threw before him, catching the little creature with a gleeful smile. Nighteye was quite sure there were tears in his eyes. "You're okay!" he said in obvious disbelief, raising the bird up to his eye level to gaze at her lovingly. It was sweet. "Sorry!" Present Mike whispered to Nighteye, hurrying over to his side. "We were just with Ari and she was talking about Siren. She said she had been with her nearly all day, but until she disappeared earlier." Nighteye ran his hand through his hair. "I don't know how long she's been here. Longer than I've been awake, for sure. She might have gotten shut in." Canary was definitely crying now, talking animatedly to the bird about not thinking his quirk worked on her and him trying to focus his power on Nighteye instead, but his emotion clearly got the better of him and... "You saved me," Nighteye realized. Canary stopped chattering away to his bird immediately. She was still cupped in his hands as he turned to the hero. Well, I tried." Nighteye just stared at him. Slowly, he let a small smile spread across his lips. "You did a good job." "Thank you." It was in this moment that a couple of nurses finally reached the room to check on Nighteye. They were rather surprised by the visitors he had received in the short space of time, since they were obviously last here, especially by the bird, who had now hopped onto Canary's shoulder as he desperately explained that he was to leave the hospital very soon and he would take her with him. "I didn't know where she was. I'm really sorry. I swear she..." Present Mike let out a small laugh as he leaned against Night-Eye's bedside. He looked over to him for an explanation of what amused him so. Present Mike nodded towards the boy. "He's gonna make a change, you know. All Might's gone and someone's gotta fill the gap. I believe he's the one who can do it." Night-Eye looked to him too, watching him and the little creature whose beady eyes now once again met the hero's own. He had always thought Mirio would be the one to be the next symbol of peace. It was a logical conclusion. He was strong, powerful, mentally, physically, and in his several quirks. He had never considered there may be someone else out there who could rival him even the slightest bit. But if there was one thing that Canary had taught him, the future wasn't set in stone. Night-Eye smiled, knowing that maybe this time he had the chance to see that future, whatever it may be, without his quirk. So maybe, well, this is just my thought. I could be completely wrong. Well, there was just one light from the song I used on Nighteye. One of the lights reached Siren because Iceweed was holding her. I didn't want the song to help her because I was really worried that Sir Nighteye was going to die, and I didn't have much strength left, and I wanted to make sure that I gave everything I have to him, and I didn't know if I could possibly save both of them, so I didn't want to risk it. But, well, back in the sports festival, I got really emotional in, a couple of songs, and it massively enhanced what I thought I could do. And maybe this time I was really emotional, and even that one light that reached Siren was enough to reverse the damage. Present Mike blinked at Midoriya, who quickly realized that had all spelled out very quickly. "I absolutely agree!" his teacher replied eventually. "You have no idea what I just said, do you?" "No, not at all!" "That's what I thought!" The two of them were back at UA now. Ari held tightly onto Midoriya's hand, taking several steps to only one of his as the three of them, four, including Siren, wandered back over to Earth's Heights Alliance after a very long few days. "So if you guys meet up with your friends," Present Mike suggested as they reached the door, "I'll go find a racer and then he can pick up Ari for the night. Sound like a deal?" Midoriya nodded and waved. "See you in a bit." The door closed behind him, and he was hit by a sudden realization. It was very, very quiet.
Where is everybody?
Harry questioned, a tang of fear in her tone of voice. I don't know, Midoriya admitted. All the lights were on. He walked around the common room area with Eri a couple of times, spying discarded jumpers and random pieces of paper. Even a couple of abandoned phones. Nope, something was definitely up. But then he spotted on the table a bright purple guitar pick decorated with black skull and crossbones. He picked it up and turned it over in his hand, examining it closely. The only person this could possibly belong to was Jiro. But there was no guitar in sight. With a frown, Midoriya's gaze automatically shifted over to the edge of the sofa, specifically just underneath. He'd seen Shinso kick a guitar underneath. Not that long ago now. It was weird, but Midoriya had just decided to ignore the peculiar encounter and leave them all to it. Now, his curiosity finally got the better of him. Want to go on an adventure to find them? He questioned Eri. Gripping his hand tighter, Eri nodded. He passed her the guitar pick, which she was quickly entranced by, and they left the dorms as quickly as they had entered. Okay, where do you think they could be? Midoriya asked the little girl beside him. He was painfully aware that the last time he had taken Eri out for a little adventure, it had really been Toga, and she was taken back to the villain she feared. So to make sure she was comfortable, Midoriya let Eri take the lead. After a moment of intense thought, Eri clenched her fist around the guitar pick and marched off ahead, pulling Midoriya with her. He laughed. I have a feeling you know more than me. Siren flew along beside them as Eri walked Midoriya through the grounds of UA. She clearly knew where she was going, and she was surprisingly fast for someone with such little legs. It didn't take long for Midoriya to hear something very interesting. Music. It was music he recognized, lyrics familiar to him too, but it felt rather out of place. What on earth was going on? When Eri had finally reached her destination, Midoriya's mouth fell open in shock. Before him was every single member of his class, including Kachan, all gathered on some kind of stage. Many were wearing gym clothes or just UA's traditional PE kit, whilst others sported something less suited for moving around and instead held various instruments. And then we'll have a Baraka with her quirk above the crowd. But we're only allowed to do that with the proper safety implications, so Zero can use his tape to act as safety wires for anyone who ends up floating. Midoriya caught Yaoyorozu's words as Eri excitedly hurried towards them. Don't look now, were Shinso's words, which immediately made everyone look in Midoriya's direction. What's going on? He questioned, gaping at the scene before him, which slowly morphed into a brilliant smile. Eri! Jiro cried. Oh, Eri! Yaoyorozu added, crouching down to let her run into her arms as Eri stumbled up the stairs to the stage. Okay, everyone we care about is here. Shinso grinned, looking away from Midoriya. You're forgetting someone! Midoriya replied dramatically, shrugging Siren off his shoulder. Oh my god, guys, it's sing myself! Mina screamed. Midoriya wasn't sure if she was being melodramatic or not. Not until she collapsed into the invisible arms of Hagakure, pretending to be killed by Siren's mere presence. Still gazing around in awe, Midoriya followed Eri's path up to the stage. What is this? He asked now that the reunion was over and done with. Siren's okay! Baraka said, completely ignoring Midoriya's persistent questions. You had us really worried there, wouldn't it? Added Asui. Good to see that you're alright too! Grinned Kirishima. And you! Midoriya nodded. The last we'd seen of Kirishima, he was wearing an awful lot more bandages than he did now. But seriously! It's just the culture festival stuff, obviously, Jiro said, rolling her eyes as she cooed over Siren and Eri. Obviously? Midoriya repeated. What's the culture festival again? Oh, come on, Canary. It's like you've been too busy or something. Do you ever listen in homeroom? His classmates berated him with mocking comments, grinning all the while, so Midoriya was pretty sure they were joking. We are preparing our part for the school, Ida explained, always right to the point, which was just what Midoriya needed. Which you're not allowed to know about, added Baraka, who passed Siren over to the nearest person to her, which turned out to be Kachan, who tossed her over to Kirishima like she was an iron or something, and started to push Midoriya out of the group. Why not? He exclaimed, very confused.
Because it's a surprise!
Agakane squealed, bouncing up and down. Well, it's not much of a surprise anymore now, is it? Sarah laughed. You're doing a music thing? Midoriya realized eagerly. Well, he'd already realized that much, but he hadn't been too sure why. Well, yeah, Jiro responded, twiddling her earphone jacks around her finger nervously.
Jiro's doing the music and singing, and I'm the chief choreographer!
Exclaimed Mina, who had now resurrected herself after Siren's presence killed her. Midoriya was more than stunned, and terribly excited. How long have you been doing this? Since before the whole voice thing came back, admitted Jiro. We weren't sure what the future was going to be like for you, and we thought we'd try our best to cheer you up. He was going to cry. He'd cried way too many times today. This is a problem. Ah! Mina suddenly cried out, pulling at her horns. This is too much! Katie, join in! But the surprise! Agakane reminded her, tapping her repeatedly on the shoulder, which Midoriya could only see because of the way it moved Mina's hair. Well, Jiro hummed, we haven't actually finalized the very end of it. Midoriya could do like a surprise appearance for the last course, shrugged Shinso, who really was holding a guitar. Midoriya looked at it and then to him and grinned stupidly. Shut up, Shinso said, rolling his eyes. He was smiling too, though. Only if everyone's in agreement, Ida quickly intervened. Of course, it's ultimately up to Midoriya. It kind of goes against the whole point of, started Agakane, who still seemed very keen to go through with this old surprise idea. Can I? Midoriya replied to Ida eagerly, eyes wide as he turned to Jiro, who seemed to be in charge of all of this. Eri tugged at the end of Yaoyorozu's skirt. Can he? Shinso pointed at Eri. You can't say no to that face. That's literally impossible. Jiro grinned. True. He can? Eri repeated with a slight pout. Midoriya wondered whether she put it on purposely, which made him slightly proud in a weird way. Of course. The little smile was worth the trouble. Mina immediately grabbed onto Midoriya's shoulders and turned him around like a Baraka had attempted earlier. It is exactly 8:03, and we therefore have 27 minutes until we need to wrap it up for the evening. Go get changed out of your hero outfit and get your butt back here! She drilled like an army sergeant. But Go! She insisted, pushing him towards the stairs, which he fortunately didn't fall down. You can move faster than that, Midoriya. Shinso called after him as he started to jog down the stairs. Midoriya laughed and started to run back down the path towards the dorms. We can see you walking! Yelled Mina. I'm not walking! Midoriya shouted back, and he continued to run all the way towards Heights Alliance, bumping into President Mike and Mr. Aizawa on his way over. Are you okay, Canary? President Mike questioned worriedly, seeing him out of breath without Eri and outside. Oh yeah! I'm just going to get changed to help the others with their culture festival thing. Errors were done, he panted. He gave Mr. Aizawa a wave, who thankfully also seemed perfectly alright after the ordeal he had been through during the raid, and continued off into the dorms. The two teachers were still there waiting for him when he returned not long after, in his new gym gear that he really hadn't had the opportunity to put much use into yet. Is everything alright? He asked as he hesitated before them. President Mike just beamed! Absolutely! Midoriya blinked at him, nodded, and then took off on a jog back towards where Class 1A's stage had been. You took your time! Mina exclaimed. Midoriya laughed as he ran back to the stage. So, he sighed, grinning wildly.